Same here, Mike. Hope you had a good New Year, and hope 2016 goes well for both of us.
I hope so, too. It's already got off to an interesting start. I guess I'll start with, since I was on vacation last week, and I got a text message when I was out to dinner from my mother telling me that Chip Kelly got fired, and she wanted confirmation on that. A week later, are you still a little surprised at the timing? Now that the dust has settled, does it make more sense?
Yeah, a little bit. I think as you kind of, talk to people and got a feel for what was going on behind the scenes and what led up to all this, now, I mean, I was really surprised that night when it happened. I'll admit that right up front. I didn't see it coming. I thought a change at all, any kind of change, was a long shot. I mean, Jeff Lurie's track record seemed to indicate to me that he would, let this play out for a little bit longer with Chip Kelly. But I certainly didn't see the Tuesday night before the season finale. That just seemed really out of character and really unlike anything Lurie's ever done in 21 years of owning the team. So as you kind of talk to people now, you kind of get a sense of how things had kind of fallen apart around the organization, and look at what we're feeling about it. It seems a little more like it makes a little more sense, and almost said it was inevitable. As you talk to people and you get a feeling for how they felt and how they are talking about Kelly now that he's gone. You can kind of see that there wasn't a lot of love lost there, and it had played itself out. The biggest thing I think I took away from it was that when Jeff Lurie gave Chip Kelly all this power last year, I certainly interpreted that, and I think a lot of people did, as a huge vote of confidence in Kelly. Like he was basically putting Kelly in charge for the long term. And I think listening to Jeff Lurie talk about it, it was more like this was a pass-fail exam for Kelly. Whatever he was doing, kind of how his management style might have rubbed people the wrong way and all that kind of stuff. Lurie was aware of that stuff beforehand, but the guy had some success the first 2 years, and he wanted to do things his way. This really explains why Howie Roseman stayed with the organization. I mean, Kelly was demanding full control of personnel. Lurie didn't fire Howie Roseman. He didn't get rid of him. He just gave him a different title and pushed him aside a little bit, but left him there for if this pass-fail exam went the way it did. Roseman was sitting right there ready to go back to his old job and his old responsibility. So looked at now that we know how it played out, it all kind of makes more sense. But at the time, I was completely caught off guard by it.
Yeah, we're talking with Phil Sheridan. I was reading Peter King's MMQB, and I thought he brought up some interesting points. He said back in September, Lurie called Kelly a culture builder, an excellent coach whose door is always open. He's everything we all thought when we interviewed him and more. 16 weeks later, he was a culture record, a bad coach, a bad communicator. His door wasn't open. How did everything change so quickly?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think it did. I just think that, at the beginning of the season, Lurie either wasn't aware enough of what was going on, or he was just, giving a vote of confidence to the guy that he had entrusted to run the team going into the season. I think Jeff Lurie would have been delighted if the Eagles went, 12-4, won the NFC East, and were, getting ready to host a playoff game and all that. That's what he would have preferred to have happen. And at the time, he was giving Chip Kelly every outward and within the organization every inward sign of support and confidence. So I think that's all that was. And that was Lurie. This is the guy that's running our team, and we believed he would do all these things. And this, I'm acting exactly as if that's all falling exactly the way I thought it would, and things are even better than I thought they'd be. But I think as the season went on, and there were more cracks in the foundation and more evidence for Lurie to look at. I imagine that he suspected some of this beforehand, but because they won 10 games each of the first 2 years, there was a pressing reason to make a change or to. But I mean, here's the thing: if they when they went 10-6 the first 2 years, and Kelly was not the guy that we kind of found out that he was, and he was not a difficult guy to get along with, or it was not the guy that demanded control of the organization and kind of forced Roseman out. If that was the case, a 7-9 season in the third year would not have gotten you fired. I mean, that it's not proven, obviously, but the way it wasn't so much the record. It was like that record. It was Chip Kelly's taking the reins of the organization, taking them away from Howie Roseman, a guy that Jeff Lurie likes even more than I understand, but he does like him a lot, and then falling on your face with it. I mean, DeMarco Murray, you trade LaShawn McCoy and you get Kiko Luck, and how did that work out? And then you replace him with DeMarco Murray, and how did that work out? I mean, and that's a lot of that's coaching and personal decisions that are just not very smart. I mean, you got a guy that led the NFL in rushing last year. You know that DeMarco Murray is an effective running back in the NFL, and Chip Kelly could not make it work. He could not get that guy to function in his offense. I mean, that was a huge coaching failure and personnel failure. And so, I mean, there's a lot of stuff like just sort of accumulated, and I think kind of made this whole move inevitable.
I'll talk with Phil Sheridan, ESPN.com, NFL Nation. A lot of times when a coach leaves, there's a lot of reaction from players, whether or not they're happy, sad, indifferent. What kind of feeling has there been, or was there when the players were? I mean, do they feel like this was a knee-jerk reaction mistake, or do you get the feeling that most people felt we are ready to move on to somebody else?
Yeah, there were a few guys I think that really were kind of bought in and really embraced what Kelly was doing and really believed in it. And those guys seemed a little bit, I won't say depressed, but a little bit down about it, and a little bit, and unsure about what this means. I mean, they went all in with this guy, and for 3 years they did everything his way. Very different from how the rest of the NFL does things in a lot of ways. Now what do you do? I mean, do you buy in completely to the next thing? Do you just buy into everything that comes along? If you're a player and you've got that decision to make, I mean, this is a tough call. But for the most part, I mean, a lot of guys, I was actually kind of surprised by how little, they just didn't seem that emotionally attached to the whole Kelly thing, Kelly as a person or Kelly as an ideal. They just kind of moved on. I mean, even like a guy like Connor Barwin, who I think is a pretty smart guy and very good player, had a career year last year, and has really bought in and been, really an advocate for a lot of the stuff that Kelly does. The other day we were just talking about it like, our defense plays 3 more games a year than the Seattle Seahawks defense does based on the number of plays they play. And that's a function of, Kelly's hurry-up offense and the no-huddle and all that stuff and the tempo thing. That trickles down to the defense. Next thing you know, the defense is on the field too much. And, for 3 years, Connor Barwin defended that. And he basically said, no, it's the defense's job to get itself off the field. It's not the offense, it's us. But, now that Kelly's out, he's kind of saying, no, we do play 3 extra games compared to the Seattle Seahawks defense in terms of number of plays that we're on the field for. And so you get the sense that guys like that who maybe didn't buy in 1,000%, but bought in enough, was successful, was doing things the right way, was certainly a guy that you could build with and build around and count on. But in the back of his mind, he's kind of going, well, there are problems here. This is not really working out. We're on the field too much. It's wearing everybody down. The defense is not effective. So when Kelly's out the door and there's no more reason to kind of pay lip service to his ideas, you can really hear it in Barwin's voice. He said basically, I like Chip. I believe in what we're doing, but fact is, it was costing the defense a lot in terms of their ability to be effective. So there was a lot more of that kind of reaction. Just guys kind of, and like a guy like Lane Johnson, another guy who's a pretty smart guy, thoughtful guy, paying attention to what's going on around him. He just kind of didn't really get it. This is his only NFL experience with Chip Kelly, so he doesn't have anything to compare it to. But a coach that you can't really feel comfortable talking to, or people don't feel comfortable going to him with problems, or he's not going to change things because it's the way the NFL does things. He doesn't want to do it that way. That stuff kind of wears a team down, and I think it wore this team down quite a bit.
Let me ask you this, Phil, and we'll get into the coaching stuff in a bit, but you mentioned how often the defense is on the field more. We saw in the final game, and you don't want to put a lot of stock in that, but, they changed the tempo of the offense. You saw more audibling. You saw, just a lot more elongated drives. In other words, if this is a situation for a coach that's coming in here, is he looking at this team and saying, this is a 7-win team who had a disastrous situation, or is he looking at a team that's a 7-win team and he can come in and say, I can work with what they have here if we tweak some things? So is this an attractive 7-win team?
Yeah, I think it can be. A lot depends on the quarterback situation. I think that's obvious. But, if you have Sam Bradford, if you can get him locked up and committed to this team, which won't happen probably anyway till after the coach is hired. And the coaching search and the coaching hire is part of what will determine Bradford's future. It'll determine how the Eagles feel about Bradford, because if a new coach comes in and goes, "Hey, I got Sam Bradford here, I can win with him. I've seen what he can do in a couple different offensive systems now," then they're going to go very hard after committing to Bradford. If the new coach doesn't really believe in Bradford and really wants to go out and get his own, whether it's drafting somebody or signing somebody or trading for somebody or whatever it is, obviously that puts you in a whole different place in terms of how your team's potential is. If Mark Sanchez is the quarterback starting next year because you're developing a rookie, obviously this is a team that's going to be 2-3 years away from really being a contender. But I think the pieces are there. Most of the defensive personnel could play a 3-4 or a 4-3. They really didn't get rid of guys that were 4-3 players. And Kelly got a lot of credit for the team winning 10 games his first season because they'd gone 4-12 the year before under Andy Reid. But that was not a 4-12 team in a lot of ways in terms of personnel and everything. They had a huge amount of injuries on offense, especially the offensive line was completely blown out with injuries in 2012. The quarterback situation wasn't ideal. Nick Foles ended up starting, I think, 5 games or something like that. He was a rookie. What Chip Kelly inherited was not really a 4-12 team, in terms of its personnel or its potential. I think this team, if Bradford is back and you do, some semblance of what Pat Shermer did in a short week and build the offense in ways that get the most out of Bradford and the most out of guys like DeMarco Murray, that can be a very successful offense. And it wasn't that bad an offense this year. It can be just fine. Shore up the offensive line a little bit, make a couple key moves here and there, and you're okay. And the defense can be okay if you don't do the no huddle stuff and wear it down, and you kind of let guys, build defense around the guys you have and getting the most out of them instead of forcing a bunch of ill-fitting parts into a 3-4 scheme. So yeah, I think the potential there for this to be a relatively quick turnaround. Somebody could come in and say, "Hey, I've got to draft a quarterback and build from there." In which case, you're talking about a whole different equation that you have to judge on. But depending on who's hired and what they come in as their approach, then we'll kind of find out as that goes on.
Phil Sheridan, ESPN.com, NFL Nation, covering the Eagles. All right, let's kind of dive into this conundrum that they have here. They have an unsigned quarterback and no coach. How does that make this situation more challenging for Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman in this situation than maybe in the past when they've tried to hire a coach?
Well, it's really not that different in a lot of ways. I mean, when they hired Andy Reid, he was coming in and the quarterback was basically a complete question mark. They drafted Donovan McNabb with the second pick in the entire draft in '99 for a reason. There was nobody else here, really. And Reid's idea from the beginning was get your quarterback, build around them. And that's what I mean. If a coach comes in that way and they're going to draft somebody this year with all the risk that comes with that, then that's going to be a little bit of a project. I mean, that's going to take 2-3 years before you even know what you're looking at. But it's a tough situation in that regard. Now, the thing about Bradford is, ultimately, if they decide, we really want Sam Bradford, and that's something that the new coach really wants, they can franchise tag him, and that's not an ideal situation in terms of salary cap and the level of commitment. You're talking about almost $25 million for one guy. That's not what you really want to do, but they can use that tool to make sure that Sam Bradford's here and give the new coach a chance to install his program with Bradford's quarterback position. Assuming that's what he wants, of course. But you have that option, so it's not completely hopeless. Or you have a complete vacancy at the quarterback situation. And it's better to have the option of Bradford than have nobody. And I don't mean to call Mark Sanchez nobody because he's the guy you could if you drafted a kid, Mark Sanchez could be what Doug Peterson was back in '99 for McNabb. He could be the guy that runs the offense, does all that stuff. and helps the rookie kind of get ready, on the sideline, and then eventually help him get ready on the field. So, there are some pieces in place that can make that a little less, barren than it appears when you look at it as no Bradford, and no quarterback. But ideally, you would hire a guy who has a very clear idea of what he wants to do, whether it's Bradford or going with a rookie or drafting somebody or trading for somebody or whatever it is. You need to have somebody with that vision and that much of a plan. And I believe Laurie will be looking for that. I don't think they spent however many hours with Adam Gase yesterday and didn't come away with a pretty clear idea of what Adam Gase would want in his quarterback situation. So that's what the interview process is about: finding out what your options would be, what the guy wants to do, and also what the organization is capable of doing within that guy's parameters.
Yeah, I guess let's start with Bradford and assume that he's the quarterback coming back here. Does it make the most sense to go with Pat Shurmur and keep that continuity, or go with a guy that you might like more, but then you're kind of playing with Bradford, learning another new offense? How many offensive coordinators has that guy gone through?
Yeah, that is a problem. And I think it's more important to get a guy you really believe in and you really, think has, the football know-how and the kind of, whatever that X factor is that coaches bring to a team. Make sure you need a guy that you believe has those qualities, the qualities that can win a Super Bowl. If you believe Pat Shurmur can do that, and it helps, Sam Bradford in terms of his transition here, and actually, making it attractive to Sam Bradford to re-sign here, then that's a factor that you could make a big part of the equation. But I wouldn't settle for Pat Shurmur just to appease Sam Bradford if you don't think he's that guy. I've covered Pat for a long time. I've known him for a long time, going back to '99 when he first got here with Andy Reid. He's a really good guy, and he's a good coach. I don't know that I've ever really perceived him as a guy that's like, hugely inspirational leader type of guy. Now, he could be, and I don't see how he acts behind the scenes with players. Bradford certainly responded to him. The team in general seemed to respond to him at the Meadowlands the other day. They really liked the way they approached that game, and that was sort of Shurmur showing off, hey, if I take this group of players and some of the fundamentals of this offense, you can make more changes in the offseason than you could in 4 days. But take what they do and how they do it and tweak it a little bit, and here's what you get. And in just a couple of days, they got basically their best performance on offense in quite a while, and certainly Bradford's best game of the season in numbers wise. And DeMarco Murray touches the ball once and goes 54 yards. So he kind of made a case for himself there. But if you really believe, I've read about Adam Gase and I've read about Ben McAdoo, and some of these guys are obviously interesting candidates and guys with a record for doing well with quarterbacks and stuff. But I've never really spent any time with them. I can't tell you, Adam Gase is like Mr. Magnetic personality and inspirational leader. I have no idea about that part of it. You don't know that till you really get there. Andy Reid did not come across that way for the most part, honestly. So, Pat Shurmur is at least as personable and, magnetic as Andy Reid ever was, at least in public. So, a guy can be that kind of personality, kind of low-key, and still be a good coach. So, it's possible with Pat. But I wouldn't pass on a great coach, a potentially great coach, if I'm Jeff Lurie, just to appease Sam Bradford with Shurmur. I wouldn't do that. But if Shurmur is the right guy, and he may be, then I would have the courage of sticking with that guy rather than feeling like I would get somebody flashier.
Yeah,
that would be a mistake.
It's interesting because the coach quarterback tandem is so important in this league, and it seemed that Bradford was taking a step in the right direction, and he seems comfortable in this offense, and it almost feels like Shurmur can mesh a little bit of what he liked from Kelly and also use some stuff that he learned from Reed and Holmgren and maybe morph something that would be pretty interesting to and not to mention some of his own stuff that he used with Bradford in St. Louis and maybe get the most out of this guy if you're going to invest that much money in him. Yeah,
that's a major part of this too. You're exactly right. If you if you re-sign Bradford, it's going to be for a really large financial commitment. It's going to be over a period of years. And, if that's going to be your franchise quarterback, you really got to do what it takes to get the most out of him. Now, the argument for a guy like Adam Gase is that he was able to go to Denver and, work with Kyle Orton and work with Tim Tebow. And then when Peyton Manning got there, work with Peyton Manning, learn from Peyton Manning, and then run an offense that kind of met, Peyton Manning's specs. So if Gase can do the stuff that he's done there and then go to Chicago and, kind of get Jay Cutler kind of new life, if he can do all that stuff, then he could be a guy that could really, get the most out of Bradford and bring a fresh approach that works for everybody. I mean, and so, there are a lot of moving parts to that. Shermer has the most familiarity with Bradford and Bradford with Shermer. There's already a comfort level there that, you have to have if you're going to be successful with your quarterback and your head coach. But that doesn't mean that a guy like Gase can't come in and, be even better if he's got, the opportunity to do it. Making that determination, though, based on interviews and, just kind of a feel and your intuition, that's what Jeff Horry's got to try to do here. That's not going to be easy. I mean, you can't just, hire Adam Gase and keep Pat Shermer and have them both, have a contest to use the better coach for Sam Bradford. It doesn't work that way. You got to make a decision now, and it'll be a very tough call. But if it's a guy like Shermer, I mean, I'm not going to be a guy that's going to be here, highly critical of that move. I think it would take some more courage in some ways to go with a guy that you really believe in, who doesn't excite the fans that much, than it would be to just make the flashy hire. They did the flashy hire 3 years ago with Chip Kelly, and that's how that turned out. Not so well.
More on the Eagles. Phil Sheridan has it at ESPN.com, NFL Nation, as the Eagles. Adam Gase will be back this weekend. Ben McAdoo tomorrow, and we'll see who else is on the list between now and the weekend. Or are they just waiting for Gase to kind of come back and all signed, sealed, delivered? Pat Shermer earlier in the week, and obviously, of course, Deuce Staley earlier before that. Phil Sheridan, everybody here, 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, Mike. Take care.